Hi everybody, it's Firefly with Girl Scouts of Alaska again. Today we're going to try a new recipe. It's one I haven't tried before. It's a chocolate mug cake. So it's a cake that you can make in the microwave using a mug. A friend shared this recipe with me a long time ago and I still haven't had a chance to try it out. So this is the perfect opportunity. The first thing I'm going to do, just like the other times, is disinfect my working surface. I want to make sure that anything that I had a chance to collect on my table between the last time that I used it and now gets wiped off and fully disinfected before I get started. All right, so my table is nice and clean, it's disinfected, so now I'm going to wash my hands and make sure that those are nice and clean before I get started. Next thing I'm going to do is take a look at my recipe and pull out all the ingredients to make sure that I have everything. So looking at my recipe, I need 4 tablespoons of flour, 4 tablespoons of sugar, 2 tablespoons of cocoa, 1 egg, 3 tablespoons of milk, 3 tablespoons of oil, and 3 tablespoons of chocolate chips. And another reason I chose this recipe is because I'm hoping that most of these ingredients you already have at home. So if you want to try this and have a quick, easy dessert one night this week, that you can try it out as well. So I'm going to set this off to the side and grab out all my ingredients. All right, I've laid out all my ingredients and it looks like I have everything that I need. I also found a mug. This is a really big one. You probably don't need one this big, but since I've never made it before and we're all trying it out together, I thought I'd use a big one. Once we figure out just how big of a little cake this makes, you can decide what kind of mug that you want to use. We're actually going to mix it together right inside the mug, so we don't even need a separate bowl to mix. And what it says to do first is to mix the flour, sugar, and cocoa together. So I'm going to move some of these out of the way. And that's pretty common in a recipe for you to mix together the dry ingredients first and then add your wet ingredients. So it looks like this is going to be a pretty standard recipe. So I need 4 tablespoons of flour. Remember, you want to try to get it as even as possible. So you could use, actually, instead of using my finger, I'm going to use a butter knife this time. So it's a nice, dull, just plain cutlery. And I'm going to use it to flatten out my tablespoon. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm definitely getting some flour on the table, which is fine because I'll clean it up when I'm all done. So right now, all I have in my mug is flour, and I'm going to add the sugar next. And I'm going to use the same measuring spoon, but instead of dipping my tablespoon into there, I'm going to pour the sugar in, and it may not go as well as I hope, but we'll see. I just don't want to get flour into my sugar container in case the next time I make something, maybe I'm making something gluten-free and I don't want there to be flour in there. One, 2, whoa, see, I just spilled, so I didn't fill it all the way. And 4. So you may just want to grab a completely different measuring spoon rather than try to pour it in, because it is kind of a small spot that you're aiming for. I just didn't feel like dirtying another tablespoon because I know I'm going to need a fresh one to use in my cocoa container. Fortunately, I do have another tablespoon, so I don't have to wash that one and dry it up really quick. So I've got flour and sugar in here so far. I'm going to add my cocoa. This is a brand new container. Guess I haven't used it yet. All right, so I need 2 tablespoons of cocoa. 1 and 2. All right. So since I happen to have this knife out from when I was measuring off the flour, I'm going to use it to stir up what I have in here. You could use a spoon. That would actually probably work a little bit better. You could use a little whisk if you have one. Just want to get it a little bit better mixed. So now it's all kind of a light brown. That's the flour, sugar, and cocoa. All right, so now we're going to spoon in 1 egg. And if you've watched my previous videos, you know that I like to crack the egg into a separate dish before I put it into whatever I'm mixing it into. It's really good, especially if you haven't had a whole lot of practice with breaking eggs, because then it gives you a really good opportunity to pull out any pieces of eggshell before you put it into your mixture. So you can use the edge of your bowl, you could use the edge of your table, something hard to get a crack going. And then again, put your thumbs into the crack and pry it open. And there we go. And since I have egg on my hand, I'm gonna pause and wash my hands to make sure I get all of those bacteria off my hands before I keep going. All right, so I decided it might be better to actually use a spoon to add in the egg. I think that will help it mix together a little better. And what I'm gonna do is puncture the yolk and kind of stir it up a little bit before I get going. Sorry, that's my cats playing with my window shade string. So I'm gonna mix this together a little bit. Doesn't have to be super mixed. I just wanna make sure that the egg is broken up, and then I'm gonna pour it into my mug and stir it up a little bit. Ooh, it's starting to smell really chocolatey. All right, so it's kind of like lumpy and chunky right now. Fortunately, we're not done adding ingredients yet. We've still got a couple of wet ingredients left. So now we're gonna pour in the milk and the oil. And we need 3 tablespoons of milk. And I'm gonna reuse one of my tablespoons because I don't have to put this inside of the container. I'm just gonna pour into it. 1, 2, and 3. And if you're having a hard time holding it steady, if you hold it up above, you can always set it on the edge of your container, your bowl, your mug, whatever it happens to be, to keep your hand steady. All right, and I need 3 tablespoons of oil. I have vegetable oil. You could use canola oil. You could probably use peanut oil, whatever you happen to have at home. 1, 2, 3. All right. So now I'm gonna mix it. It's really lumpy and chunky and kind of oily, so I'm gonna have to mix it quite a bit. If you've ever mixed up a box cake or even a cake from scratch, you might have an idea of what cake batter looks like. I assume that's the consistency we're going for here because this is kind of like a mini cake that we bake in a microwave. All right, so now it looks pretty good. It's not super lumpy or chunky anymore. Seems to be pretty smooth consistency. So I'm gonna add my last ingredient here, which is chocolate chips. So says 3 tablespoons. So I'm gonna use the cocoa spoon since that's already kind of chocolate anyway. So 1, 2, 3. All right. And the reason I waited to add these till the very end is because I didn't want that to mess up the mixing up of the smooth batter because chocolate chips are kind of hard and chunky. I wanted to make sure that the rest of it was smooth before I added those chocolate chips. All right, so it looks like I have everything. So I'm going to wipe off my spoon here just so I get the extra batter off there. You'll have to ask your parents if it's okay for you to lick the spoon. That's up to them. I'm gonna set that off to the side. And if you notice, I have a little bit, maybe it's kind of hard to see, I slopped a little bit when I was stirring. I don't really want that to burn when it's in the microwave, so I'm actually gonna wipe the edge so that it's all mostly in the bottom. So I just wiped it a little bit to make it a little cleaner. And since I just made my hands a big mess, I'm gonna throw away my trash and wash my hands again real quick. All right, so as far as I know, I have all of my ingredients mixed together in my mug. I can double check my recipe. Let's see, I put in 4 tablespoons of flour. I got the sugar, the cocoa, the egg, the milk, the oil, and the chocolate chips. So the next part is going to be to bake our mug cake. In this case, we're not actually putting it in the oven. We're gonna bake it in the microwave, which is probably a little bit different than any other cakes that you've made. And it says to put it in the microwave for 3 minutes on maximum power. I usually keep my microwave on maximum power anyway, so I'm just gonna put it in for 3 minutes. If your family keeps it on a lower setting, you might wanna ask your parents how to adjust the setting to make sure that it's at max capacity. So I'm gonna grab my mug and I'm gonna stick it in the microwave for 3 minutes. And the last instruction besides putting it in the microwave is to wait until it stops rising and sets in the mug. So 3 minutes might be too long or too short depending on your microwave. So just kind of keep an eye and make sure that your cake is still safe. It's not looking like it's gonna bubble out of the top and make a huge mess. But once it kind of stops rising, that's a good time to at least stop the microwave. You're probably going to want to use an oven mitt to grab it out of the microwave. I would expect that your mug is going to be kind of hot. So I'm going to get mine ready and keep an eye on it and make sure that it's rising okay and that it's not bubbling over or anything like that. And while it's in the microwave, this is a good opportunity to clean up your workspace. So you can start by putting away your ingredients and wiping off your surface again. All right, that was 3 minutes. My microwave just went off, so I'm gonna grab my mug out using an oven mitt just in case the mug is really hot because it's been in there a while. Whoa, that's kind of cool. Does it look jiggly? Looks jiggly for me. That's fun. I don't think it's actually quite done. It looks really like batter underneath, so I'm gonna put it in for another 45 seconds or so to see if that cooks it a little bit more. And in that time when it was cooking, I managed to put all of my ingredients away and put all my dishes in the sink and wipe off my surface. And just as a note, the mug was pretty hot. I could feel it through the oven mitt. So you're definitely going to want to use an oven mitt or a hot pad or even a doubled up towel, as long as the towel's not wet, to grab it out of the microwave. I can hear it sizzling. It looks pretty good. Still looks kind of wet around the edges, but I'm gonna actually just leave it in the mug for about a minute. It's really hot, so I don't really want to touch it yet. The last direction in order to eat it is to turn it over onto a saucer. So while this cools a little bit, I'm gonna go find a saucer. If you don't have an actual saucer, you could use any other sort of plate. You could use a bowl, just something to get it out of the mug. So it can cool a little bit more before you eat it, because it's probably gonna stay pretty hot if it stays in this mug. All right, so I'm gonna treat this as if it were a regular cake. So when I'm done baking a cake, I tend to loosen the edges a little bit around the outside of the pan. This one actually kind of loosened itself. It's really not sticking to the edges, so I'm not gonna do that part. And the handle of the mug is cool enough for me to touch, so I'm going to use that. But what I like to do is take the plate that I'm going to flip it onto, put it upside down over the top, and flip it. And because I want to grab not just the handle, but also part of the mug, I'm going to use the oven mitt on the other part. There we go. Oh, it's very hot. There are a few chocolate chips stuck in the bottom. That's okay. I'll just spoon them out, fork them out, I guess, since I'm using a fork. I think all of the chocolate chips probably settled on the bottom because they're heavier. All right, and there is our beautiful mug cake. Hopefully yours looks something like this. It definitely looks and smells very good. It's also still very hot, and as much as I want to try a bite, I'm gonna wait a minute so that I don't burn my mouth. My mug is also still really warm, so as much as I want to put it in the sink to let it soak so I can get the chocolate out, I'm not going to do that, because if I put cold water in there, or even if it's just not as hot as this is right now, I don't want it to crack. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon if you think about it, putting cold water into some sort of hot glass container or ceramic. Because there's such a difference in temperature, it could potentially crack. And I don't want to do that because I like this mug. Looking at the size of this, I think you could use any sort of mug. My coffee mug that I've been using this morning is a more regular size mug, I guess, maybe a little bit big. I think it would very easily fit in there. So if you have a mug about this size, this would work really well. I think even something a little bit smaller would probably work too. So I think maybe this is cool enough to try a piece. I'll blow on it just to make sure. It's very chocolatey. I think for just a quick, easy treat, if you want some sort of dessert after dinner or some sort of fun breakfast maybe. This is really good. I definitely prefer a regular cake. If I were gonna like bake a regular cake, I like that consistency better, but the flavor is good. It's almost kind of spongy. I wonder if I can show you. Probably not very well, but it's kind of spongy, not kind of light and airy like a lot of cakes are. But I think it's pretty good. So go ahead, try it out, see what you think. I will post the recipe for this along with the video so that you can try it out. Feel free to reference back to the video for some tips. If you find a variation that works really well for you, maybe more flour, less oil, however that works for you, this is a good time to experiment. See if there's different amounts for ingredients that work better, or maybe a lower setting on the microwave for more time. You can try different varieties and see what works for you. And if you have a completely different mug cake recipe that you want to share, feel free to share that and any other tips that you find out as you try this out on our Facebook page. That's our Girl Scouts of Alaska Facebook page. Tune in next time for a different recipe, and be sure to share those ideas if you have anything that you want to try. We'll see you next time.